And start with the program, I'd like to get us organized a little bit and just share a few details. First, I'd like everyone in the audience today, if you don't mind, to first make sure your mics are muted and your video is turned off. It appears that it's that way already, so I think we might have it set up that way. But we really want to do that so we can just see the speakers and panelists. Let's see what else. There is a speaker view icon on the top right-hand corner of your screen. If you click on that, the speaker's image will be more prominent. That might be a little easier for you to watch the panel that way. So feel free to click on that. There's also a chat box on the right that is there for any technical problems or issues you might have, questions that come up. Faith, who's with PNCA, will be checking that and hopefully being able to help you out. So that would to use the chat box for any issues. We will also be recording today's session. If you want to watch this anytime after, if you miss it or you want to pass it on, there'll be a link posted on the PNCA alumni site where you can view this anytime you want. On just a slightly different but related note, I wanted to remind everybody that we're still taking nominations for the Laura Russo Distinguished Alumni Award, which will be handed out during the 2021 commencement ceremony. Submission deadline is December 7th. We have had so many impactful individuals who've come through our doors at PNCA. I'm sure many of you have ideas of folks who'd be worthy of this honor. So see the link on the PNCA website and do nominate someone. Okay, now our program. I want to welcome everyone today again and to what we hope will actually be a wonderful opportunity to hear from some PNCA alumni about their unique journeys. Last week, Unlimited 2020 exhibition opened, and this year we had over 80 artist submissions. I hope all of you have taken the time to click on the web link and view this incredible range of creativity. The idea of doing these panel discussions was a way to try to bring the exhibition to life, put some faces to the artwork, and maybe be inspired by those who continue to develop their artistic voices. My name is David Cohen. I'm from, again, class of '83. I'm excited to help facilitate these conversations and create a platform for artists to share their stories. My experience at PNCA had a profound impact on my life and career pathway, as it has, I'm sure, for many of you in the audience. As we listen to the artists participating in this series, I'm hoping we can get a glimpse into the diversity of expressions and directions that each person's PNCA's experience helped provoke. We've lined up 25 alumni to speak over these 5 weeks, so we're hoping you can tune into all future sessions. The same link should be able to get you into each Zoom session each week. So now I'd like to introduce the artists. The 5 alumni we've got today are Fritz Liedtke, class of 2002, sorry. Jan Maddel, class of 2008. Anita Spaeth, class of 2018. Elena Thomas, class of 2018. And Sam Hutt, class of 2019. As a way of introducing yourselves, let's start off with a short story of how you ended up here today. And so what we'd like you to share very briefly is sort of the broad arc of your journey as a creative. Why don't we start with Fritz?
Somehow I knew you were going to start with me. Great. Let's see. My story starts in high school. Actually starts in junior high when I took my first photography class in the 9th grade and loved it. And so I continued in high school, and I had a great teacher in high school that really encouraged me. So eventually I went in school. I eventually went to PNCA and studied photography and printmaking there, got my degree there. And kind of while I was in school, I also started my business as a professional photographer. So I've been photographing full-time since then. I started actually in 2000, so I'm in my 20th year as a professional photographer. And also I've always worked really hard to balance the professional side of my work and the personal fine art side of my work. So throughout those 20 years, I've also been creating a lot of work of my own, a lot of projects that have traveled around the world, and been published in magazines and featured in National Geographic and things like that. So always kind of working at balancing things that interest me, both in my personal work and my professional work, and try to keep it fresh, which is challenging the older you get. So yeah, so that's why I'm here today.
Yeah, great. Yeah, the need to constantly challenge yourself and find new ways of expressing yourself, always a challenge. Fritz, thanks so much. Jen, why don't you go next?
My life over 73 years in 3 minutes.
Do it.
I could tell many, many versions, but here's at least one art-related one. Any version would be filled with many winding paths. As a child, I loved art especially, as well as music and poetry. I lived on the Olympic Peninsula in Washington, had a father who climbed mountains, and so I could hike and climb, as well as swim in salt water and explore forests across the street. I was always asking why. I was always looking at the largest possible perspective I could, long before I knew the word perspective. All these things have become part of my art over the years. In college, above all, I wanted an interdisciplinary major as an undergraduate. Sadly, they did not exist. Sadly, my father advised me to become a secretary or teacher so I could follow my husband anywhere. Sadly, this was also the era of the Vietnam War and not a time that either I or my husband could think about career arcs. It was much more like, do we flee to Canada or what? In the next few years, I could finally think about a career. My husband suggested medicine since my interests were so broad and I liked helping people. It seemed right. I took a physics class from a professor who suggested that it was very important that we start moving to renewable energy now. This hugely influenced how I've lived my life and also affected my art. I did become a physician, which was very satisfying. I also started doing more art on the side, which was a wonderful ballast. The art and medicine balance plus family was just right for years, until suddenly the art became very rambunctious. It wanted more time. I finally gave 6 months notice and left medicine. Eventually, I found PNCA, where I had a wonderful, stimulating 3 years in the painting department. Subsequently, I've been painting ever since. I like to work in large series with varied themes. One was embracing it all / mostly. Eventually, I made my way to the entire cosmos, and then a second cosmos-inspired series. Finally, back to Earth, I did, among other things, 2 interconnected series, geology-inspired and a Jungian shadow-inspired series, and I found many more mentors along the way.
Great. Wow, what a story. Thank you. Anita, why don't you go next?
Thank you. Gosh, well, I had like a pathway kind of mapped out that I wanted to go through too, but hearing Fritz mention their high school experience really got me thinking about like how important that was when I was in high school, first coming across like social issues, you know, when you're 16 and you're mad at corporations, but you don't really know why. It was really essential to have my teachers be really encouraging of that curiosity. And so my path kind of went from there, took a few years and worked, went to PNCA and changed majors like 3 times. And really when I was struggling at PNCA to find passionate about or what medium excited me the most, it was the encouragement of my teachers that stuck with me the most. And so I ended up getting into teaching myself, and I've been doing arts integrated environmental education for a few years, just because of that role that teachers and really awesome mentors have had in my life, that's where I'm currently at. So my path will hopefully take me to OSU to get a master's in environmental arts and humanities. But I think that's a pretty succinct description of my path, is trying things and then being encouraged along the way and deciding that I also want to be that person for other people in my life. So teaching is where I'm at now.
Cool. Wonderful. Thank you for sharing.
Mhm.
Elena, why don't you go next?
All right. Well, I honestly also realized that I was really interested in art for the first time in high school. I had some really great teachers that sort of helped me along. After high school, I was able to take a couple of classes at a place called the Yestermorrow Design and Build School. It's a place in Vermont. I took a basic carpentry class and a hand-built chair class, and it sort of introduced me to the world of woodworking and carpentry, which I have to say I absolutely fell in love with. After that, I attended Pitzer College, where I got a major in art and a minor in mathematics. I spent my time at Pitzer kind of exploring different mediums. I took some drawing classes, some painting classes, some ceramic classes, sort of trying to find what really fit. But I was definitely drawn back to mixed media sculpture and also woodworking. I had a chance to build my first kind of large scale sculptures, which was something that I was immediately drawn to doing. And I also had a chance to make an interactive piece, which led me to make a climbable sculpture, actually. And then my thesis was an interactive installation that made use of the existing architecture, which sort of framed my notions of wanting to include sort of physicality and existing space in my artwork. After I graduated from college, I focused a little bit more on my photographic work, which I had interest in before. My dad actually had done some photography in his past, and I had always seen those around our house growing up. And so I'd always been kind of interested. I sort of delved into that, and I was able to attend an artist residency, which sort of made me realize that I wanted to be around creative people more. So I ended up applying to PNCA for the graduate visual studies program. I absolutely loved the program. It really helped me continue my work in woodworking. I branched out into different materials, made larger immersive installations, really pushed myself. My thesis ultimately was this like 2-level specific space installation with a climbable sculpture aspect that really incorporated the movements of the participants and audience into the piece itself. It really helped me focus my ideas and helped me move forward. After I graduated, I joined a studio in Southeast, which unfortunately due to financial issues went under, which is an unfortunate part of studios in Portland. But I did have a chance to join ADX, the Art Design Exchange, and I'm still a member today. However, I do have to admit, for the past 6 months, I have been working a little bit more from home, just, given the nature of everything. I have continued making sculptures. I work a lot with the square as a motif, as can be seen in my piece that's in the show, in the Unlimited show. And I started to make some small models, and ultimately those models became small sculptures themselves. And most recently, partially due to being sort of stuck in one place more often than not, I've been working on some digital artwork, which is also incorporated in my piece that's in Unlimited. And that sort of brings me up to now.
Great.
Very good.
Thanks for sharing. Sam, why don't you talk next?
Okay, I started drawing in middle school, and then I took my first art class in high school. It was, I found it to be really fun, and it was a lot better than any of my math classes. So I decided in my senior year that I would go to PNCA after I had visited and saw all the trees and rain, and it's a whole lot different from the desert where I grew up. And started off just kind of a little bit lost, a little bit awestruck. I wasn't sure if I wanted to be in drawing or painting or illustration or animation. And eventually, at the last moment, I decided to stick with animation. But I really like doing a little bit of everything. I like to draw, I like to paint, I like to do sculpture. As my thesis, I actually started into music composition as well as animation. And um, just kind of decided I didn't want to stick to one medium, but instead focus on being more of a jack of all trades kind of artist. And I found that that really kept me motivated and more willing to learn and get out there and sort of branch out and meet new people if I'm not just feeling stagnant with one type of art, with one medium. I just graduated last year, uh, still working retail just because of everything going on. And yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Great. Somebody who's got a video on, if you could turn your video off, and anybody in the audience, as well as your mute, that'd be great. Thank you. Okay, next question. I think what makes us unique as artists is that each of us has our own brand of curiosity. And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about what is it that pushes your curiosity button or the inspiration that underlies your creative work. Why don't we start with, actually, Sam, why don't you get us started?
Sure. I have always been interested in sort of the nature of the unknown and sort of like fantasy and the supernatural. A lot of my work has to do with sort of like cryptozoology and like paranormal encounters and sort of this like what if genre, you know, what if ghosts existed, what if animals look like this sort of thing. And then I also have just a fundamental curiosity about how stuff works. I like taking things apart, putting them back together and learning how they run and you know what makes things tick. And I think that's kind of why I've gravitated towards an area of sort of collecting called vulture culture, where I collect animal bones and sort of general curiosities like gemstones and sort of like antique things, because it sort of gives me an inside look at how animals work and how people work. There's sort of this strange sort of beauty that comes from seeing something that you would normally see in a normal circumstance. And I've just kind of always been curious in general about the world and about everything on it. And I like to try and bring that into my work, not necessarily answering, but just kind of exploring the what ifs.
Cool, thank you. Jan, why don't you go next? Again, what's the inspiration, curiosity piece for you, Jan?
I'll give you one story of which my painting in the exhibition is one part. My sand paintings are an exploration inspired by Tibetan sand paintings that are raked smooth after being mindfully made. In each case, impermanence is being explored. My exploration uses sand figuratively, not literally. Among other things, this is also an exploration of memory, how layered and imperfect it is. My medium of exploration is oil paint on single wood panels. And I will aim to share this painting with you while I explain a little bit more about the process and give you a chance also to notice what the painting might mean to you. I always invite many meanings with my paintings and feel like my meaning is only one among many. Now I'll tell you about the process with all these paintings. For many days, I paint improvising in the morning on a wood panel. Dancers, apparently in solitude or in connection, stretch, cavort, and whirl, often within or around aspects of the cosmos, such as galaxies. Then I photograph many details that might themselves become an individual painting. Next, I draw on the oil with hard implements, often writing words and phrases. Again, many photos. Then I scrape away parts of that day's oil paint. I think of this subtractive part as another form of painting. And then, of course, more photographs. The following day, I start the process as described above on the same panel and continue repeating it on the same panel for many days until I feel like it's done. These digital images are all that remains when I have finished. Some of them are also worked on afterward in Photoshop. Some of them are forming series. And okay, and just finishing up, inevitably aspects of this quote, interesting unquote year are leaking into the paintings, including the one submitted this year to PNCA entitled Precipice. For me now, today, this alludes to how all of us on this small planet are standing on the edge of a precipice of politics, of climate crisis, of racial injustice. I am wishing us well and wishing us wisdom.
Thank you so much. Elena, why don't you share about your curiosities?
Okay. So I have to say in general, and it took me a while to sort of narrow it down. I'm very interested in perspectives and how different they can be, but most specifically in the way that we perceive things, like our actual perceptual interpretations of what's in front of us. I really like to turn those perceptions on their head. I enjoy making work that makes people need to take a second look or want to take a second look, and to create opportunities for people to reconsider a space, object, or material that they might consider to be commonplace. My sort of disruption of norms that I like to explore can be seen a lot in my photographic work. I like to work with reflections and shadows, anything that sort of distorts what should be something straightforward that's right in front of us. I also kind of like to work with precariousness versus structural stability. So I like to build things that look precarious, but actually are pretty sturdy. As with my thesis, that was sort of a component of that, my graduate thesis. Also, the sort of interactive pieces where how people move through the space and then how I can sort of control that or disrupt that is sort of also a passion of mine. Sort of this notion that we walk through spaces every day and we don't really think about how we're moving through them for the most part. So thinking of ways to disrupt those natural movement patterns is something I'm very interested in. Playing with ideas of structure, and that is a big part of my square sculptures as well. I've used them to make interactive sculptures. I use them to create negative spaces by interlocking them and connecting them with each other, sort of using them as a framework or even a threshold to walk through. They also sort of give me a framework for my own art, because they give me a bunch of possibilities and like one component that I can experiment with and try different things with. And that actually inspired me to do some of the digital interlocking square drawings that I have been doing, and that is part of my piece. I'm going to attempt to share my screen as well. Let's see how this goes. Okay, it doesn't seem to be working out. So hopefully people can just check that out on the website. I am just at the beginning right now of expressing these sort of interlocking squares in multiple mediums and juxtaposing them with each other like I did in the piece that's in the Unlimited show. So I hope to explore that more as I go forward.
Great, thank you so much.
Oh, there it is.
There it
Thank
is.
you.
Do you want to say anything
Yeah.
else about that piece?
Oh, well, I was just going to say that like enjoying sort of seeing how these things can manifest in different materials. And I'm even looking to try even more materials in the future and putting them near each other in a idea of sort of compare and contrast or juxtaposition.
Great, thank you. Fritz, why don't you go next? Curiosity for you.
Curiosity. I think I like to use the word intuition when I talk about what kind of inspires my work. So I'm always looking for what intuitively captures my attention. Whether that's something really beautiful or a story that I want to tell. A lot of what I end up photographing, I discovered early on, I should say, I love photographing people. So whether that's portraits or just their physical form, or whether I'm telling stories about people or a type of people, that's kind of where my curiosity has led me over the years. So I did a large series of work on portraits and stories of people with eating disorders. That was a book and a touring show. I did a series of portraits of women with freckles that I printed as photogravures. That toured quite a bit and was featured by National Geographic. And so things like that really capture my attention. Sometimes as a photographer, I know if I'm going to be working on a project for several years, that I have to find subject matter that somehow gets me deep enough that I can chew on it for several years and not lose my attention or interest. So I end up, like any artist, you start more projects than you finish. So I'm always kind of looking for that next project that I'm going to be able to chew on for a while. That's going to keep my curiosity peaked. Yeah, and then I think there's something to be said for beauty as well. I don't know how popular a word that is at the moment. Maybe it's more popular than it was 20 years ago, but I really just like beautiful things, and whether that's places or people or artwork, that really feeds me, both to create it and to look at it. So I'm always looking for beautiful things to photograph as well. And beauty doesn't just have to be pretty, of course. It can be dark and moody and difficult as well. But yeah, I'd say intuition, beauty, stories, people, those are all the things that kind of fuel my curiosity.
Great, thank you so much. Yeah, beauty is, it's strange that it's become a four-letter word
Right?
in the art world, but we need to talk about it some more. So glad you brought that up. Anita, why don't you go next?
Thank you. I love this question. Again, like I tried to kind of map out my responses in some way, but just hearing everybody even talk about their curiosities and inspirations, that's very inspiring for me. And I think that's like the teacher part of me. And I think we all have that. We're just like, if somebody else is curious or inspired, and if you can read that on their face, or if they tell you out loud, that's just like so exciting for me. So, and that inspires me as far as like my teaching or my social practice goes. So I think the way that my teaching practice, my creative visual art practice intersect is through a variety of punchy art words, like everyday life. Going outside right now, I'm thinking because just what else am I going to do right now? So I have the privilege to be woofing. For those of you who don't know, is basically a work, live, trade on organic farms. So if you can't tell by the strange bunk beds and prayer flags, that's where I'm at. So I'll just go outside and watch the chickens interact and just think about their communication styles, or watching clouds pass. And I don't think it's just, just like watching things. I think it's really inspiring to be able to just sit quiet inside, to not be talking, to not be trying to figure anything out, just to be observing things as they're passing by. And that's very for me. So I would include the natural world. So I like going out mushroom hunting and looking for those little curiosities, kind of popping in a hike, doing their own thing. They're not there. Really thinking without the necessity of my. And then as far as the piece that I included in the show, which I'm also going to try and share the screen. Let's see. Desktop, that seems right. Maybe not. Maybe I'm just not going to bother with that. Y'all can look at it. So I do poetry. So inspired old books. Oh my gosh. Visual from the advancement. I love old books. I love the text. I love when you can run your fingers along the text and you can feel the indent of the letterpress. And to me, that reminds me, or alludes, I think, to the person whose ideas are going down, or to the publisher who was sitting there and putting those letters together and printing it all out. That's really inspiring. But the last one I would say that is really big for me right now, as I'm really getting into the history of the American conservation movement and looking into whose voices throughout the conservation movement are canonized or celebrated or held up as like the truth of why conservation needs to happen. So that's getting into all sorts of issues surrounding environmental justice, indigenous sovereignty. Those are really inspiring because it helps me to see the privilege in my everyday life. So yeah, thank you.
Great, thanks so much. What a great answer. Actually, everybody's answers, so incredible variety of responses to a simple question, but the breadth of kind of where everyone's coming from is pretty spectacular. So thank you for being so forthright and sharing like that. The next question I want to ask is really about obstacles and barriers, but I also feel that's a kind of a negative way of looking at things. I also want you to maybe also think about, if you don't want to talk about obstacles and barriers, to being a creative and being a creative today. Also maybe think about opportunities too. I know as dark as the pandemic and our current situation could feel, I also know it also has created some opportunities. So again, just in a short amount of time, think about how, anything you'd like to add about barriers, opportunities, or obstacles to being creative today. Actually, Anita, why don't you start?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I like that it said obstacles / barriers parentheses opportunities, because often it is about mindset, not always though. So I would say some opportunistic barriers that I find myself encountering is my ability to stay focused. Certain things are a little bit harder for me to stay focused on. And sometimes my visual art practice, like making poetry, is really hard for me to focus on because I just want to go sit outside and watch chickens half the time. So that's yeah. Anywho, so I think that feeds into my answer that I was talking about earlier, as far as like other people being inspired is, I think, an opportunity for me. It's an opportunity for me to step outside of when I get stuck in my own head of like, what am I making? Who am I inspiring? Blah, blah, blah. When I'm stressed about all those pressures in the art world, to really like be constantly producing. And if you haven't produced, like, be sure to share your work in progress. So that presents the opportunity in the form of, what's everybody else doing? Let me just see what everyone else is doing, just talk to a friend about what they're thinking about, not necessarily what they've put down on paper today, but what they saw that was inspiring to them. So yeah, the pandemic definitely has presented barriers in the form of canceling out a lot of teaching opportunities that I was going to be a part of, but then it opened up a lot of opportunities for me to reflect on the extreme privilege I have to have food on my table right now, to have a place to stay, to have people listening to my voice when I speak up. So those are a succinct thought on that matter. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Sam, why don't you go next? Obstacles, barriers, but also maybe opportunities.
I'll start with an opportunity. I was lucky enough 3 years ago to land a retail job, but a job at the Oregon Zoo as a retail photographer. And because of that, I have sort of learned a lot about the people of Portland and just how beautiful nature is. I've seen the change of seasons, which I wouldn't get if I was back home in Las Vegas. And because of my access to these high quality cameras that I would never be able to afford in the first place, I was able to photograph the skull that I submitted to the show. Um, and being in Portland, I was also able to get this skull. It's a beaver at an oddity expo last year at the convention center, and to sort of explore this relatively new art practice of painting bones and adhering sort of gemstones to them and bringing a new life to the dead, basically. Um, I took the photo I took for this show was taken in March, right before the zoo closed because of the pandemic. And after that, I was out of a job until July, and that was a large sort of gap in time that was filled with a lot of anxiety and sort of depression and just a lot of uncertainty. I'm still full of uncertainty now. It's just such a weird limbo that we're all in. And I was especially anxious in June when the protest started because I live downtown and I could hear all the flashbangs going off. I could hear the police LRAD going on, and I was afraid for my friends who might have been out there. I was afraid of what was happening in Portland. I'm still afraid and angry, but also sort of proud and seeing like a light at the a silver lining in the midst of all this chaos. And so I'm grateful to be here and to have a lot of friends who are lifting each other up. I'm proud to see all these mutual aid networks that are popping up, especially in Portland and with my friends and even in my community here in my apartment building. And I'm also grateful to have my job back and going outside and being outside and seeing people, even in this pandemic with everyone's mask on. It's definitely helped me uh, retrieve my creativity from this sort of dark pit I was in for a few months. And I'm finally drawing and painting and making again. And I feel hopeful.
Great, thanks, Sam. Fritz, why don't you tackle that one? Obstacles, barriers, opportunities.
Yeah, good question. I think the biggest obstacle is time and having enough of it, especially when you have to make a living. And I have small kids now too, so that makes the time even more difficult sometimes to come up with, especially right now when we have to homeschool and everything's different this year. So in general, for me, self-discipline and focus is not an issue. I'm pretty good at that sort of thing. So even when things are really busy, I try to craft a space and time for me to get in the studio and create work. But if I had unlimited funds and could retire right now, I would just be in the studio all the time making my own stuff. So I think time is the biggest obstacle that I would say comes up for me. There are also the challenges, of course, of showing your work, of getting into galleries and whatnot. I think that's changing. So on the one hand, that's an obstacle. On the other, there's an opportunity there as things become more digital, as we learn to more promote our own work and sell our own work. I think there's some good opportunities there. It's a learning curve, and it takes time to kind of craft that audience and the ability to sell your work. But I think that's changing a bit. That's encouraging. Yeah, I think the last one, the challenges, one of the last challenges I'd mentioned is just the learning your materials, right? Especially if you're constantly challenging yourself and trying to learn new things. I come from a kind of classical photography background, and then have over the years kind of morphed that into combining it with printmaking and collage, and now within caustic as well. So I'm always experimenting and trying to make new things with materials that I've never worked with and processes that I've kind of made up, so nobody's ever worked with them. So there's the limitation or the challenge of learning your materials and making them do what you want them to do. If they will.
That you're still creating on a level that you've been able to create before. So
Yeah.
Definitely. Well, thank you. Okay, how about Elena? Why don't you go next? Obstacles.
All right.
Barriers. Yeah.
Okay. So definitely some of the obvious or normal obstacles, space for sure, because I do like to make large scale things, time, funds for materials. But specifically, I often encounter physical limitations because you may or not be able to tell on Zoom, but I'm actually pretty short. And so I have limitations in being able to lift things and reach things. And I do like to work large scale, and it's kind of a trouble when you like don't have that big of a wingspan. So that's a little bit of a limitation. And I've also had a couple of injuries that have prevented me from making some of the work that I would really like to make. I do have to say, interestingly, in spite of that, it's actually sort of pushed me into some opportunities that I hadn't maybe previously considered. So I talked briefly before about making models that ended up becoming their own small sculptures. That was in part because I was having a sort of lack of space, but also experiencing a bit of a shoulder injury at the time. So I wasn't able to work with larger materials. So it's sort of, I like to think of it that maybe it was a barrier, but it also gave me an opportunity to sort of work into a material or size that I hadn't previously considered. Same with the shutdown. I do have to say it's been a struggle. Like other people have said, it's a crazy change in our way of life. But I have previously worked with digital stuff a little bit, but really being stuck at home more, I did get laid off. I have also been working in retail. I've been working at Powell's, which I absolutely love. And but so I definitely have been pushed into making more digital art and more things that I can do more easily and have more access to. So and sometimes, like a couple other people have said, you have to adapt a little when crazy things happen. Like this past year has been a little crazy.
Yeah, thank you so much. Jen, why don't you finish up? Obstacles or challenges and maybe opportunities.
I'm going to focus on two obstacles, which I also aim, however imperfectly, to view as opportunities. My ever-changing art directions do not fit well with most galleries. Instead, I've had numerous 1- and 2-person shows in Washington, Oregon, and California, and sold many paintings. This definitely has been a winding path, for better and for worse. I am fiercely committed to following my many muses: painting itself, improvisation, exploration, dance, music, poetry, astronomy, natural history, collaboration with a very wide variety of people, psychology, and more. but I love it. Without consciously planning it initially, I've realized that I have done more than an interdisciplinary major in college. I've fallen into an interdisciplinary life. The second area has to do with when my own breadth finally became too much, and as opposed to opportunity turned into an obstacle. It's been the perfect storm. We had an adorable grandson born in May. We care for him twice a week. So there's a full-time art life, a beloved grandson, and then COVID, politics, climate crisis, racial injustice work, all making for an extremely busy life. On top of that, my ample fountain of inspiration went off the chart. And when I was beginning to feel like I'm not making progress on anything, realized I was working on dance-related paintings, the sand paintings, a totally different meditation on impermanence, a graphic novel that I'm doing with a friend about a feisty young girl who ends up being beamed up into a spaceship manned by a gawky young adolescent who by convergent evolution is T-Rex appearing. And lastly, a series of mobiles. So basically I'd say I'm in process on this one. So far, I've laid aside 3 of these projects temporarily in order to make good progress with the others and have fingers crossed on the remaining ones.
Thank you. Yeah, in a way, it's a funny question because as artists, all we do is deal with challenges. We don't have it. We actually like challenges. We want challenges. That's what gets us going. So we're used to trying to find answers. And so a great range of responses from everyone. So thank you. The next question is really about PNCA and your time at PNCA, and wonder if folks could reflect a little bit and think about how their time at PNCA might have affected, influenced what has come after. And so Jan, actually, why don't you get us started with that one?
My senior thesis in painting has had enormous influence on me and inspired me in ways that continue even now to grow. I'll talk first about the art and then the rest of life. From the art side, briefly, my senior thesis in painting had 2 main themes: improvisation and water. Improvisation has been key in all my art since then. I am more present and open as I work and play. I've learned that I must build many skills and much discipline in order to improvise on top of that base. When doing my thesis, I learned that there was not very much written about improvisation in the visual arts. As a result, I was very fortunate to find several additional mentors in addition to my esteemed mentor in painting, Victor Maldonado. They included the writer Kim Stafford, the jazz musician and professor Dennis Pleiss, dancer and professor Pat Wong, and chef and restaurant owner Ron Paul. All were extraordinary mentors, generous in time, ideas, and wisdom. All these directions taught me much more about improvisation. Each direction has played out in many new but related directions. For example, I've worked collaboratively with several poets, including Amita Lamo, with whom I did a painting series and a calligraphic series of her poems. Through Dennis, I met a composer, and she allowed me to play her compositions both at a show inspired by the cosmos and in a video made inspired by the show. Also, I'm often looking for more mentors, knowing how important that can be. I worked with 3 astronomers when I did the universe-inspired shows. More recently, I've done sketching of Body Vox and also Mintron Dance Company, as well as the Katie Sherman Dance Company. These sketches in turn have inspired many paintings. And now to the rest of life. With climate crisis, COVID, record wildfires and smoke, record hurricanes, and racial and economic injustice, and more, we clearly need to live within what our Earth can support. We also need to personally and as groups build more resilience, flexibility, strength, discipline, and organization. All these things are important parts of improvisation in music, art, and life.
Yeah, thank you very much. Elena, why don't you go next? Your PNCA experience, what is it? How has it affected your life today?
Well, probably in multiple ways. I live in Portland now, which I definitely didn't before. But as much as I feel like it's hard to boil it down to one thing or another, I do feel like my time at PNCA, especially with my professors and my peers, it did give me a kind of courage. I mean that in the sense that it like pushed me to push my art into bigger and greater things, to make some of my a little bit crazier ideas into reality. It was encouraged, in fact, by many of my professors to try these possibly more out there things that I wanted to do with my art. It also sort of gave me the courage to own my own artwork and defend it. And I don't just mean the like 30-minute defense I had to do, but for sure, it helped me really sort of fine tune my creative aesthetic and sort of work out my creative motivations and sort of how my process and sort of fine tune my own process and how I make things. I especially hold on to some things that that my professor and mentor Nan Curtis said to me. She told me to be a brat, basically take risks, ask for what I want, and that sort of confidence and encouragement to take risks and sort of push myself has sort of stuck with me in my art practice and in my life. So
Great. What a great answer. Thank you. Sam, why don't you go next? Your PNCA experience.
I definitely found a big sense of community at PNCA. Just the smallness of the school. I come from a very large high school where my graduating class was the same amount as the entire student population of PNCA. And so I felt nice to recognize people everywhere I went. And even if I didn't talk to them, I knew I had this sense of camaraderie with my fellow artists and my teachers. There was a point in 2016 where I was not able to return to PNCA for my sophomore year because of financial troubles. And I ended up attending the State College in Vegas for a semester. And it is a huge school, a whole city block of buildings, and it's like 30,000 students or so. And I felt very lost and insignificant, and the art program was severely lacking. And I felt very lost and just confused about what I was doing and really questioning my path. But the one thing I knew for sure was that I have to get back to Portland some way or another. And eventually I did. In 2017, I returned. I managed to get credits transferred, so I wasn't too far behind. And as soon as I came back, I just felt this huge sense of relief. And I realized that I was born and raised in Vegas, but Portland is now my home. And all of my friends are here. The weather is much more habitable, in my opinion. And I definitely feel more creative being surrounded by other creative people than the sort of solitary feeling I get when I'm back in home, back home. And I definitely got to push my art farther and try a lot of new things. even just in the foundation classes when I took sculpture for maybe the third time in my life, and I got to learn how to do soft sculpture from my friends and my teacher, and now that's become a big part of my art practice. Um, and just sort of seeing all the kooky things Portland has to offer and taking a walk in nature, which I've never been able to do before because of just the climate. I've found a lot of positive upticks from being in Portland and just being in a community that I feel a part of.
Great, thank you so much. Anita, why don't you go next? Your experience at PNCA and how it's kind of impacted your world today.
Sure, thank you. A few things stick out. One of the first ones that Sam's response had me thinking of was I had sort of like a creative existential crisis one semester and threw my hands in the air and was like, I don't know what the heck I'm doing. I'm completely lost. And it was in this really strange, awesome class that Linda Cleaver had, and it was called like Outside In or Inside Out. I can't remember what it was. It was pretty open-ended, interdisciplinary. And she told me to just go to a park. She was like, don't do anything, just go to a park. Go to parks, write, don't write, whatever, just go, get outside. And that sort of encouragement to try other things, to be experimental, but in these really like lovely ways where it was more personal. It wasn't just to take like huge risks. It was like, go figure out who you are through subtle ways, like go relax. I had another breakdown, and Aubrey Oncliffe, who was my thesis mentor, said, go home and listen to Nina Simone if you haven't before. And it was so lovely to be given that permission in a way that I don't think I had experienced before. So all that being said, so access to mentors, resources, the space, materials, books, that's so transformative in so many ways, just beyond trying a new medium, but being able to hear new voices that I had never heard of before. That was hugely transformative. You gain the skills to know how to research, how to look at media critically. That's been so important, especially these days when you get random articles stating this or that. My first question is always, who wrote it and what's their intention? So that's been transformative. And secondly, a really huge one that I'm really grateful for is the opportunity to experience constructive criticism. That's not to say that whenever those opportunities came up, they were always healthy environments. I definitely, being a woman, I definitely have experienced moments in the classroom at PNCA that left a, bad taste in my mouth, but not as much as I'm sure other people have experienced. But just that opportunity to try and sit and listen to other people just tell you exactly what they think your art is saying, and to take that and to experience a bit of an ego death is really big. It's really big to take that ego and put it in your pocket and just to listen to other people authentically. And again, that doesn't always go over very well for everyone in those settings, and it didn't for me always, but there were some really great opportunities that now when I'm out in the world feeling challenging moments, I'm able to be, to just be like, well, let's pretend this is a critique and my opinion is on the wall and people are looking at it and telling me what they think. And I can engage more authentically in those experiences instead of getting defensive and arguing my point until my eyeballs pop out. So those are my answers.
Great, thank you. Fritz, why don't you finish up the question? Your
Sure
time at PNCA, I know it was a long time ago, but you
It wasn't that long ago.
it was a really long time.
It's surprising that it was 20 years. I honestly can't believe that. Well, not quite 20 years since I graduated, but two things really stick out for me from my time there. I loved my time at PNC. It was a lot of fun for me. I like to jokingly tell people my wife got a biology degree after I got an art degree. And so for my degree, when we had a test or an assignment, I'd be at the table drawing and collaging and stuff. And my wife would be like cramming for chemistry exams all night with 7 other people. So I much preferred my experience in college to hers. But the two things that stick out for me, one would be relationships. I just loved getting to know other students, some of whom are still friends of mine today. I loved working with the teachers that I had there. In fact, I see Diane Kornberg is on here today. She's a great teacher. Loved working with her. Jeff Gunn, who taught caustics, he and I are still good friends, and we actually give each other feedback on our work to this day. Getting to know other people in the community and at the museum and galleries was great. I just love that exposure to other people that I got there. And then the other thing, let me see if I can share my screen since I haven't shown my piece yet here. If this will work. I'm not sure it will. There we go. Is that piece showing up for you guys?
Not really.
Great.
No.
So this is the piece that's in the show right now. Oh, I didn't want to just slideshow of everything on my desktop. Sorry. I'm bringing this up because it's for me, it's an experimentation and there's just a lot of play that goes into the work I've done the last 10 years, trying to figure out how to combine photography with encaustic, with layering and different materials and paint and hand-drawn stuff and so forth. So the other thing I loved about my time at PNC was the chance to experiment and play. I mean, I had 3.5 years there just to play pretty much with materials and try stuff, which was just great. Just I think one of the best things I learned there was just the freedom to play and try stuff, play with materials until you come up with something you really like and then try to make a series out of it. So those are my two things, relationships and the experimentation and play, which is great.
All your friends. Wonderful, wonderful answers. Thank you all so much. We've kind of hit our time. It's a little after 1, so I think we're going to wrap it up. And first, I want to just thank all the panelists for their time, their energy, their ideas, their sharing of stories, wonderful stories. What excites me is just, again, the breadth of experience. Folks who've been doing this for a long time, folks who haven't been doing it for a really long time, but the things we both share and the things that make us different, really very powerful. So thank you all for sharing. It means a lot to the community for you to do that. And I hope folks can sit in on the next 3 weeks of Friday sessions. We've got 15 more artists who are going to share their stories. And we would love it if you could spread the word and let others know, folks who might be interested in hearing from artists. And in this kind of setting, would love for you to help get the word out. Again, do check out the Unlimited 2020 exhibition. The webpage is both in the chat column and on the PNCA website. Next year, I'm hoping we actually have a real exhibition in a real space, and maybe we can get together as a community in real space and time to celebrate. So fingers crossed that the world changes before then. And do remember about the Laura Russo Distinguished Alumni Award nominations, deadline December 7. Do just go to the website and nominate someone who you think is worthy. I'm sure we all know someone who'd be appropriate for the honor. Again, thanks for being here today, helping make this a meaningful event for the panelists, for the school, and also for the broader art community. So thank you all, and we'll see you some of you next week. Thanks.
David.